Hey, what is up there, guys? This is Cobrak, and welcome to a happy little favourites list, hopefully the first of many. In this one, talking about the best dungeons and my favourite dungeons that I have played through in my journey through every expansion so far in Final Fantasy XIV. Getting right into it with a Realm Reborn, because this one's quite easy for me, to be honest. A lot of the Realm Reborn dungeons are a little bit lackluster, a little bit aged, you know what I'm saying? Kind of from a different era of Final Fantasy XIV, but let me tell you something. Keeper of the Lake? Oh man, Keeper of the Lake. That is the first dungeon where Sophie and me queued up. We were in a team full of sprouts, you know, and we got fucking pulverized. It was actually amazing. It was so fun, dude, to finally get to a dungeon that just sort of kicked our asses a little bit, and where there were actual mechanics that you like had to do, or you were just fucked. You know, you had to get things right, and you actually had to click on things and dodge AoEs and stuff like that. It actually had real mechanics, is what I'm saying, you know? So, queuing into that, man, with a dungeon full of sprouts, again, you know? And having to kind of learn the strats and do some, like, basic problem solving and stuff was just really good. It was like, okay, man, the training wheels are finally starting to come off a little bit, you know? I wish it had happened a lot sooner in a Realm Reborn, to be honest. A lot of the dungeons were just kind of face roll as hell. But, you know, Keeper of the Lake is where it happened. And for that reason alone, it's got to make the list. A quick honourable mention, however, for a Realm Reborn. And again, I should just kind of reiterate that I can only include dungeons that I've actually done. So apologies if I miss your favourite. Feel free to follow along, you know, and do this yourself in the comments as well. But an honourable mention has to be Tam-Tara Deepcroft. Tam-Tara Deepcroft, goddammit, especially the hard mode. Why? Well, because it's tied into the Ida story and the Ida quest chain, man, which is one of those, it's one of those little pearls, it's one of those little gems, you know, that I feel like a lot of people probably miss, or a lot of people are liable to miss in a Realm Reborn. And oh my god, like, it was the first quest that actually really gave me chills, you know what I'm saying? So if you don't know the story, I'll break it down really quickly. You basically encounter a kind of roughed up party of NPCs. I think they've just come out of like Sastasha or something, one of the earliest dungeons, and they're all berating their healer, right? They're all berating their healer. Their healer is called Ida. She's like a young healer. And they're all berating the shit out of her. They're all blaming her for the group wiping, and the tank like died in the dungeon, and the tank is gone, his head got cut off or something, you know. I think it's called like Avery or something like that, and she was like in love with this tank, and she got him killed, and now her group's abandoning her, and it's like this horrible story. And I think you get this beat in the MSQ at around like level 17, 18, something like that, and I didn't think anything more about it until you get to like level 50, 60, and you get a quest. You get a quest to unlock hard mode, Tam-Tara Deepcroft, right? And who shows up but the Lalafell of the group? What was his name again? I made a quick note. Pio. You meet Pio, right? And this guy has gotten word that Ida's gone all crazy. She's gone all insane. She's gone into the Tam-Tara Deepcroft to try to revive the dead tank who got his fucking head cut off, and she's gonna bring him back as like a void spawn or some shit like that, you know, because she's overcome with grief and all of her groups abandon her and blah blah blah, you know. So you go in there, you kill her off, you know, and you try to, you know, put her to rest, and it was a tragic thing, but it's a necessary evil, you know. And the death scene's really good, actually. It's like a really good cutscene. She like sets on fire and falls off the edge after you defeat her in the dungeon, you know? And you think that she's gone, but she's not. After the dungeon, man, you're talking to fucking Pio, and he's all happy as Larry. He thinks that it's over, man, but it ain't. Ida's spirit is following this guy, and she's haunting the fuck out of him. And I was like, oh my god, dude. I was like pretty genuinely creeped out, you know? Anyway, the story actually has a pretty happy little ending. Why? You go into Palace of the Dead. Ida is the first boss, and she's got like the head of the tank as like a little minion on her shoulder. So it's like, oh man, shit's like kind of macabre and fucked up, you know? But anyway, you put her to rest again, you make contact with her spirit, and you loot her ring, you know, and you bring that to Pio, and he's like a broken Lalafell because he's thinking that Ida's still haunting him and stuff like that, and you eventually get to put her spirit to rest, man. So it's a nice little ending, you know, it's a nice little ending, and multiple times throughout the story, man, I got little chills on my arms and stuff. It was just good fucking times. So next up we have Heavensward, which I actually felt like was quite a weak expansion for dungeons. I want to say. That might really piss a lot of people off. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Again, always let me know. But for me, it has to be Sorkai. And this one is more commonly known as the Heavensward dungeon. This is just the Heavensward dungeon. Why does it make the list? Because the spectacle is just incredible. As you're approaching like the final boss fight and shit, and Heavensward's flying overhead and he's blowing up platforms and stuff, and he's testing you, you know, to see if you're worthy to face Nidhogg, you know, and if you're worthy of his assistance. And it's just an incredible spectacle. Boss fight is really, really cool as well. So that one makes the list. I don't know. I don't have too much more to say about it. Like I said, a lot of Heavensward dungeons don't really jump out to me as ones that left a lasting burning impact, you know? But there you go. Similar thing with Shadowbringers, although Shadowbringers was relatively easy as well. And that has got to be the Gimlet Dark. Honestly, by the way, for a quick refresher for anybody, this is the dungeon where the Garleans are actually, it's like all-out war, you know? So it's this big, terrible battle, and there's all these NPCs that you've met, all of these alliance allies and stuff that you've met over the years, chiming in, and it's an incredible spectacle. Again, that's a theme, you know, with some of the best dungeons. They're just incredible to look at. But I think that the reason this dungeon is so good is because you're robbed of the Scions. They're all getting sucked into comas, right? Because it's in the lead up to Shadowbringers and the Exarch has got some shit going on, you know? But we don't know anything about that at the time. All we know is our goddamn allies, our Scions are falling into comas, we're losing them all one by one, and it's just us and Alice left over, you know? So you have that chat with Alice before you go into the battle, and she's kind of scared, and at the same time, you know, she makes you promise that you're not going to leave her as well, you know, and that you're going to stick together through this, because Christ, it's only you two left, you know? And it's like this really cool little bonding moment that feeds so well into Shadowbringers as well, man. So, the Gimlet Dark. What a dungeon that is, man. It's really, really cool. So that's why it makes the goddamn list for me. Next up, we have Shadowbringers, and can there be any disagreement? Oh yeah, I disagree, Cobb. No, you don't. Stop lying to yourself. Stop lying to everybody else. Amaurot is clearly the best dungeon in Shadowbringers. Okay, you're allowed to disagree. I'm only jonesing, but come on, dude. Amaurot is in with a fair shout, and I think that a lot of people loved Amaurot. And yeah, for good reason. So I think Amaurot is so epic for a few reasons. First of all, you get that huge speech from Emmett before you actually enter the dungeon, you know, where he's really throwing down the gauntlet, you know, and you step into the final days to face him. And I know that the trial comes after Amaurot, but even still, it's all the lead up to the huge battle with Emmett Selk. And up until that point, you can empathize with Emmett, you know, to a point. He was always a very likable character, even when he was being all villainous and stuff like that, you know. But actually stepping into Amaurot and seeing the devastation firsthand from the final days, like for the first time for us, you know, and getting that glimpse into what actually happened to the ancients all of those millennia ago. So good, especially the fact that we see it on the ground and then we literally just inexplicably, we end up in space and we're like looking down at the planet. Utter destruction is being wrought, and there's meteor showers and earthquakes and volcanoes and tsunamis, and it's just the most incredible and terrible sight that you could ever fucking see, you know? And it kind of makes you think as you're going through the dungeon, you're like, oh my god, man. And like Emmett is narrating the whole thing too, and it's making you think like, geez, I kind of get why the ancients were so desperate that they summoned Zodiac. You know what I mean? It makes you empathize with them without just telling you what fucking happened, you know? If I were the ancients, I would do anything to avoid that fate, even summoning Zodiac himself, you know what I mean? So I think that was incredible, and it's just the perfect setup to what ends up being one of the greatest trials, one of the most bittersweet victories in the MSQ against Emmett Selk himself. You know what I mean? Against Emmett Selk himself. Because at that point you empathize with him so fucking much that it's like, man, in a different timeline we could have easily been him. We could have easily been in his shoes, you know, trying to save everybody, and I don't know, man. Oh, fucking Emmett Selk, man. What a goddamn character, dude. What a goddamn character. I should also point out as well that getting to see the final days in this way also vastly increases the stakes in Endwalker as well. Because we actually, I mean, obviously we see a lot of the final days happening in Endwalker, but having seen them actually reach their worst point in Amaurot, provides us more context for future expansions as well, man. So when the final days are actually coming for us. So there's that too. As a quick honorable mention for Shadowbringers, we've got to include Don Meg. Why have we got to include Don Meg? Well, for the goddamn trust system. For the bridge fight. I forget the name of the boss. I forget the name. I can't remember any of the mechanics really that happened in the fight. I just remember that there's a big fucking gap in the ground between you and the boss, and a little skinny bridge gets drawn, you know, from your side of the boss chamber to the boss, and all of the Scions have like a different way of crossing over it. Alice just bombs straight over, you know, Thancred runs a little bit, then does like a backflip over that shit. Alfie's like doing a fucking balancing beam, he's all scared of heights and shit, you know. And they all have their own little quips and comments that they make, you know, while that shit's going down. And I think it's one of the first dungeons where I was like, man, the trust system, just running the trust system in this one just feels really, really worth it, you know? And last of all, we do have Endwalker dungeons, man. And for me, this one is easy. I mean, quick honorable mention before we get to it, but Smileton, hello. The goddamn Loperate dungeon on the moon. I'm just going to throw that one in there because it's just a good time. It's just a goddamn fiesta from start to finish, which I think is exactly what they were going for. It's just a fun, happy little dungeon. And if you haven't done it yet, get that blue quest done and get it done, goddammit. But yeah, for me, the undisputed best dungeon, just because I like Amon and Fendaniel and Hermes so much, has got to be the aitiascope? How do you pronounce that, man? Aitiascope? Aitiascope? The one where you're going to see Hydaelyn, right? Where you actually enter, like the ethereal plane, you know? That goddamn dungeon is so... The amount of callbacks in that dungeon to characters who we've lost, the goddamn Moonbreeders, the goddamn Orshafonts, the goddamn Minfilias, Papalimo. Like, dude... I had so many feels during that dungeon. And I love how at the start of the dungeon, things are still fairly orderly as well. You have staircases and corridors, and the lower down in the dungeon you get, the more almost primal and raw and crazy and like energy splintered the environment starts to become, you know, because you're going deeper and deeper and deeper until you finally have that last encounter. That honestly is probably the most affecting cutscenes I've seen in Final Fantasy XIV. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but for me, that final send-off for Amon was fucking amazing. It was so good, dude. Why was it so good? Because it literally felt like you were peeling back the layers of Hermes' character at just like this rapid rate, you know, and you're seeing all of these fucking sides of him in one goddamn cutscene, and it was so good, dude. It was so fucking good. You start off with Amon, he's just trying to fucking kill your ass, right? And he's ranting and he's raving in this cutscene afterwards. Oh, humans are, we're not worthy of living, blah, 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 you know? And then he slowly starts to like calm down a little bit. And by the end of the cutscene, it's like your character's just pitying him and pitying the conclusions that he's come to. And it almost forces him to introspect, you know? It forces him to introspect. And just before the end, before he is resigned to an eternity of torture at the hands of Asahi, he doubts his decisions, he doubts his motives, and he asks himself, you know, was this the only way? And so ends the age of, or so ends the life of Hermes, the man who knew so much and understood so little. And then he's gone, and it's like, oh, dude, like I'm getting shivers now just remembering that fucking cutscene. It was so good, it was so well done. The goddamn writers, Ishikawa, they have such a way of making you feel for the villains in Final Fantasy XIV just before they go, just before they die, you know, just before you lose them, and just when they were on the cusp of maybe being redeemed and maybe being made to look at things in a new light. It's too late, man. They're gone. They're out of here, you know? So the aitiascope, there it is, dude. What a fucking dungeon that is. And of course, it leads up to the Hydaelyn fight as well, which is just making you excited, more and more excited, you know, to actually get to the end of the dungeon too. So there it is. There's my goddamn list. There's my favorite dungeon with a few honorable mentions here and there for every expansion and every era in Final Fantasy XIV so far. You probably disagree with all of them. If you do, or even if you just disagree with a few, please drop your picks down below as well in the comments. I'd be really interested to see what your guys's choices differ from mine, where we agree, and all of that good stuff. So, cheers for watching, everybody. Hope you all did enjoy this happy little video, and I shall catch all of you guys just a tad bit later.